So this is segment 2, fix and flip. So I want to do a quick review. We talked in the foundational course about fix and flip and some odds and ends, but I want to do a quick review for you, and then we're going to get into some serious details. So again, on fix and flip, you've learned how to make offers and find discounted deals and do your marketing and direct mail and bandit signs and all that other stuff that we talked about. So now you've got your choice. Remember what I said. If you get really good at finding discounted properties, you have any exit strategy that you want. You can wholesale, you can fix and flip, or you can turn it into a rental property or a lease option. You have any avenue that you can go down. So with fix and flip, you've decided, hey, you've done some wholesale deals, you've got money rolling in, and now you decide to invest some of your money, or you're going to maybe get into some private money and you want to make a bigger profit. So you're going to do some fix and flips. So just remember, like I said before, fix and flips are great for those bigger paydays, but you do have real money involved and there's a little more risk involved. Obviously, if you do a really good job figuring out what your ARV is, so you know what that after repaired value is, and you really dial in your repairs, and you know what that house is going to sell for, and you're in a good market, you know that there's not a lot of risk there. So again, the fundamentals are really going to carry you through doing this right. So let's jump into let's just jump into it now. The offer formula, if you're going to end up buying that property for a fix and flip, I want you to change the offer formula just a little bit. Again, if you get a good wholesale deal and you've used that wholesale formula to buy that property, you can plug those numbers right into this formula and see if it would make a good fix and flip deal. Okay, so let's jump into it. So again, we have the ARV. We're always starting with the ARV, the after repaired value. You have to dial in what that house is worth. One of the most important, crucial steps of this whole thing. That's why we put so much time and effort into all of the training and the videos on how to figure that after repaired value. So you can't practice this enough. You can't get good enough at this. This is one of the most crucial pieces of the whole thing. So once we've got the after repaired value and we know what the value of this property is, we take it times 0.85 in this fix and flip scenario. So why are we taking it times 0.85? Where does that, when you take it times 0.85, you're subtracting 15% off of it. Where does that 15% go? Okay, so the first thing in here is when you resell this property, you're going to pay that realtor to list it. In order to get the most value for this property to sell it as a true fix and flip, you're going to list it with a realtor. And when you list it with that realtor, they're going to charge you on average probably 6% commission. Okay, when you buy the property originally, the seller pays the commission. So you don't have to pay any commission to buy it, but when you go to resell it, you have to pay that 6%. So the next thing is when you buy that property, you're going to have some closing costs. Again, I've got this padded. Generally, closing costs are about 1% to 2%. I put in there 3%. I like to add a little bit of extra protection in there. So when you close it the first time, you're going to have closing costs. Then, what if you don't get a full price offer? On average, most houses close at within 3% of the asking price. So you want to figure for that. You want to make sure you know that you're okay. So if I don't get a full price, it doesn't matter. I've got it built into my formula. And then the last thing is you've got closing costs when you go to sell the property. So again, we've got it padded. It's probably 1% to 2%. We're putting in there 3% just to make sure. So when you close the property, you've got that figured in. You've got those costs figured in. So we take the ARV times 0.85. So you don't have to figure that every time. You just take it times 0.85 and you figure it in. And then you have to subtract out your repairs. Now we're going to get into contractors and get a little deeper into repairs in a minute. But for now, we've got that real bid. So in the wholesaling version of when we were figuring our numbers, we were pretty much guesstimating what it would cost to do these repairs. When you're doing a true fix and flip with your money invested, you need to have a contractor, you need to have a scope of work, you need to figure out you need a bid on what that's going to cost to get that house repaired. You can't miss a beat. It's something that it could ruin the deal, and most people doing fix and flips totally underestimate what the true repair costs will be. And then the last thing, we have to subtract out our profit. Now, a lot of times people don't do that. They just, okay, it's worth this. I've got, my repairs, and this is what I'm going to buy it for. They're missing the whole point of this. So what it is if you don't count your profit as an actual expense in the deal, you probably won't make any profit. So you need to count your profit as an expense. So figure it right up front in your formula. So you take your ARV times 0.85, subtract out your repairs, and then subtract out what profit you want to make, and that's your maximum offer price. So if we put some numbers with this, and again, I always use 100,000 just because it's easier. So if we've got a $100,000 house, and we take that times 0.85, we're going to have 85,000, okay? So now we take that 85,000. Let's say that the repairs on this fix and flip are 20,000. We subtract out 20,000. Now we're left with 65,000. Okay, so we've got 65,000, and let's say we're trying to make a 20% profit off of what this ARV is of this house. So 20% of 100 grand is $20,000, and that's what our profit is. Some people will just use flat numbers and just say, I want to make 10 grand. I generally don't go that low because if something goes wrong, it could wipe out my profit pretty fast. And you've got to plan for mistakes when you're brand new. You got to figure in a little extra padding because you could make mistakes. So let's say the profit is 20,000. So that means your maximum offer price is $45,000. Now, again, we like to start a little bit lower, throw in an oddball number so it has a higher likelihood of being accepted. In something like this, I'm just going to go down and probably offer $41,300. That's an oddball number. And then if I can counter it, then it leaves me room to get up to this $45,000 mark. Again, you don't know when you're marketing for a deal that's unlisted what that asking price will be. These sellers responding to your direct mail or to your bandit sign, when you go through the lead sheet and you ask them how much they're trying to sell, their asking price of the property, if this scenario they were asking 30 grand, well then you're going to be much less, and your profit's going to be a lot higher, and that stuff really happens. However, if they're asking 100,000 for this house and it needs $20,000 in repairs, you're quite a ways away. That doesn't mean you can't still buy that house at a massive discount. I've talked to lots and lots of sellers over the years, down another 30, 40, 50% below what they were asking. It just really depends on how motivated they are. So, that's how I figure my formula. We're going to get into some more details and talk more about repairs as we go through this. But for now, I want you to just take a minute, do an action step, and run through this formula, practice up some numbers on a deal you're looking at right now, and then hit pause, and then we'll be back. Okay, guys, it's time for an action step. All right, so now we're back. So let's talk about finding good contractors. Obviously, when you're doing a fix and flip, the quality of the rehab and actually getting the rehab done in the right amount of time so you don't have a ton of carrying cost is crucial. So, part of the reason why I do a really good job on my fix and flips and when I'm doing my rental properties and getting the rehab done really fast and efficiently and really high quality stuff is because I have really good contractors. So I want to give you some tips on finding good contractors. A lot of times people will just take the first guy that comes across. But what I want to let you guys know is one of the best ways to find a good contractor is actually just from a referral. Talk to other people that have recently had work done. A referral is worth its weight in gold because that person had some work done themselves and that contractor did a good job, followed through, and did what they said they were going to do. Just a word of warning, most contractors out there, I would go as far as to say 75% of the contractors out there are not very good. They tell you they can do a lot more than they can do. Their quality isn't where it should be. They don't finish under the correct timeline. it could be a real nightmare if you don't really know what you're doing. So ask for referrals, talk to other people. I always, tell everybody to talk to and join your real estate investment clubs in the area. A lot of those people, either the director of the real estate investment club or lots of members, if you go in there, a lot of times they have open mic at the beginning or at the end. You can get up there and say, hey, I'm looking to do some fix and flips. I'm looking for some really good, people that, do flooring and carpentry and plumbers and electricians, and you can find a lot of good referrals that way. Or a lot of times they'll even have those real estate investment clubs will actually have a list of recommended contractors, so you can go that route. Another thing is social media. A lot of times if we're looking for a new carpenter or a new, flooring person or whatever, we'll put an ad on Craigslist and just say, hey, does anybody know of any, excellent flooring, contractors that are, have good pricing, that can jump on the job fast, that do what they say they're going to do. Carpenters, electricians, whatever it is, if you throw it out there, most people have a few hundred friends. Out of those people, they know somebody that have done some work for them that, that they trust, that they can recommend. A lot of times I'll see on Facebook, somebody will say, hey, I need a new carpet guy, or I need a new carpenter. And, in minutes, you'll have 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 different names pop up and something about, hey, call this guy. He's amazing. He did a great job. Those are worth its weight in gold. And now in today's day and age with social media, you can't escape if you've done a bad job. And if you've done a good job, you can get the word out really fast by using social media. So I recommend that you put an ad on Craigslist or Facebook if you're looking for somebody that you need specifically, and you'll get a lot of good referrals. The last way is you can use Craigslist. Now, Craigslist is, it's hit and miss. I mean, if you don't know what to post and you don't have a very good ad, you'll get 150 different responses, and that's a lot of people to wade through to find those. Out of those 150, you probably got 5 or 10 contractors that are actually pretty good. We have a really specific ad we run. It basically, our ads that we post on Craigslist when we're finding a contractor, it repels the people that we don't want to talk to, and it attracts the people that we do want to talk to. When I first started, I just put a general ad out there, really didn't know what I was doing, and I got way too many. I mean, I'd get 100 or 200 responses with my ad. Now, when I post an ad, I might get 5 responses or 3 responses. It's so specific that it weeds out all the people I don't want. So what I'm going to do is I want to give you guys an action step. I want you to go out and post an ad on Facebook, or get a hold of your real estate investment club in the area, find the good contractors, and I want you to go and post my ad. You're going to see below, you're going to see a sample Craigslist ad that we use. You can copy and paste this, put it into your Craigslist, and let's see if you can get a good contractors and start meeting some people that can help you follow through with your fix and flip, and then we'll be back. Okay, guys, it's time for an action step. Okay, so we're back. So I wanted to talk a little bit about neighborhoods and some of the other factors when doing a fix and flip. So I always grade neighborhoods, and you're basically grading neighborhoods based on value and crime. Obviously the higher the crime, the lower the values of the property. So keep that in mind. Most fix and flips are being bought by investors that are gonna, be living in the property. They're retail buyers. They're picky about where and what they're buying. So, we rank the neighborhoods A, B, C, D, or F. The A neighborhoods, these are the $1 million mansions, depending on where you're at in the country. We don't do a ton of those fix and flips because they're harder to find those deals. Most of the people that can afford the higher end homes, they own businesses and they've got liquidity, and if they hit a hard time, they work their way through it. So you don't see a lot of those types of deals. So we don't do a ton of those, but at the same time, the F properties, the high crime areas, most of those areas are rental neighborhoods. They're not the retail, homeowner type neighborhood. So we don't focus a lot there. Those are a lot harder to sell. Same with the Ds. The Ds, again, that's a high concentration of rental properties. You can do some retail flips in some D neighborhoods. It's just a lot harder. Let's stick to the stuff that's easy. Generally speaking, we stick around the Bs and potentially even some C type neighborhoods. So, kind of keep that in mind. We're looking for the Bs or the Cs. And, focus on that, because you'll get lured in to going after a D property because they're dirt cheap. And just remember, this isn't a rental property. This is a retail buyer that's going to live there. So, there's a couple different ways, a couple different types of properties to go after. You can go after the starter home price ranges, which is what we teach a lot of times to get started. Those are the lower end homes in the decent neighborhoods that your first-time home buyers are going to live in. These people are going to come in with financing. Generally speaking, they're going to use FHA financing. It's a little trickier. It takes a little longer to close, but those are the types of buyers that that you're going to get. These starter homes, lots and lots of FHA financing. And basically, FHA financing is a government-backed financing institution that you can basically move into these homes for almost nothing down. I mean, they might have 2 to 3% out of their pocket, but a lot of times they're asking for concessions, and they're walking into that deal with very little money out of pocket. So it's a riskier loan, but these people pay higher. I've done a lot of research, and you go from the same exact house, a conventional buyer versus an FHA buyer. An FHA buyer is going to pay about 5% more because they're not as picky about the price. They care more about the payment. So they're looking at the payment. Can I afford the payment every month? And if they can, they know they don't have to put hardly anything down, and so they'll pay a little bit more for the properties. So you've got those starter homes. Those are nice. What I always look at is, especially if I'm in, buying house mode as far as like doing some fix and flips and doing some rentals, the nice strategy that I use is if I buy this starter home and I'm going to flip it, let's say that it doesn't sell for the price that I want it to. And basically what I mean, I know I can always sell the property, but I'm looking for specific profit. If I can't get my top dollar for that, sometimes I'll say, hey, no stress. I'll just turn it into a rental, rent it out for a year or two, then list it in a year or two, and the market's gone up, 3 to 6% or whatever it is, and I'll resell it. And it's almost like I get my realtor commissions at that point for free because of the increased value. It doesn't always go up, but if you're in an uptrending market, don't sell too cheap because you know that the market's going to carry up a little bit further. But then the other thing, so there's a lot of protection by buying the starter homes. The second thing, the second homes for people. So these are the people that they bought the starter home 7 to 10 years ago. They've lived there. They've built up all this equity. They've paid down the mortgage. The house is worth more, and now they're ready to move up. They've got a bigger family now, or they just have more money. They're making more money at their job, and they're just ready for that higher end property. So let's say that if the average property was $100,000 for a starter home, these houses might be $200,000. They're stepping up. So you can do these fix and flips too. Those are the two types of homes that I focus on. There's a little bit more risk with the second home price ranges, and you've got to spend a little bit more money, but it's still something that you can make a higher profit on. If you find some of these, a lot of times they sell faster than starter homes if they're rehabbed right, because there's fewer of them out there, so the demand and the supply are kind of offset. So those are the two types of properties I focus in on fix and flips. I don't focus on the $1 million mansions, and I stay away from the higher crime areas. If you focus on that, you will make money. You will do deals that you can make a nice profit on. The couple of things I want to mention is you've got to match the style of the area. So remember when we were doing comps and I was teaching, the 7 different things we look for, and style was one of them. Basically what I meant by style is, hey, if you're running comps on a house and you have it under contract and there's a 2-car garage, make sure that you're, if your house has a garage, make sure all the comps have garages as well. The same with the size of the lot. If the garage is attached, if you're looking at a brick ranch, then you're comping against brick ranches. The main thing is along those lines, make sure that the neighborhood that you're buying, that you want to do this deal and there's a fix and flip, make sure that you're matching the quality of the house you want to fix and flip with the style of the area. For example, if every house in the neighborhood has a granite countertop and you choose to go with Formica because it's cheaper, you're probably not going to sell that house for the price you want or as fast. So keep that in mind. If you buy a house and every house in the neighborhood has a garage and yours doesn't, well, you're probably not going to sell that house very fast or for the price you want because of that garage. Speaking of garages, homeowners, people that are living in homes, they want garages. So we always, whenever we're doing a fix and flip, we always make sure that there's a garage. It's tempting, again, you'll see a lot of houses out there that there's no garage, and it's tempting to pick those up because they are cheap. And I do buy a lot of homes without garages, but I turn those into rental properties knowing that someday if I end up deciding, hey, I don't want to rent that one out anymore and I'm going to sell it retail, I've got room, I'll just build a garage at that point. The house values, let's say 10 years later, are 50% higher, and my mortgage is way paid down, so it easily pays for the cost for me to go ahead and build that garage and list and sell it as a retail property. The other thing, if you're in an area with basements, make sure that if that's the popular thing, and a lot of times on fix and flips, you don't necessarily have to finish the basement, but a lot of times the other houses in the areas do have finished basements, so you got to keep that stuff in mind. If you need to have a basement, make sure you focus on having basements to get that high price that you're looking for. These are all really important pieces to doing fix and flips. I see a lot of beginners, they don't really focus on that. They buy houses in high crime areas, or they get into a house that's way too expensive that doesn't sell, and then they're negative cash flow every month. So stick with the path of least resistance. There's enough deals out there. If you're doing the marketing that I'm telling you to do, you'll get the leads coming in, and you'll be able to take a look at and buy some of these houses at a really good price so that you can do get these houses and get this process done in a short amount of time. So just remember that. The other thing too is I always go in when I'm looking at these areas, I go in and I take a look at, I got one under contract, I'm running my numbers, the numbers look good, I'm figuring out my rehab, and I'm going to talk scope of work in a little bit here, but if every single house in the area, you want to pay attention to what they have inside. Again, if the countertops are granite, if they've got tile floors and tile backsplashes, tiled, bathrooms, and you've got to rehab that house with the same scope of work in mind as the neighborhood. Otherwise, you won't sell, or you won't sell for nearly as much as what you kind of hope for. So anyway, those are some really important things regarding, the style of home and the neighborhoods and what types of properties you want to go after. So we're going to jump into the next thing here in just a minute. Okay, so we're back. So let's talk scope of work. Now, this is really important when it comes to doing a fix and flip. You have to have a couple reasons. You have to have the property rehabbed according to the neighborhood, but on top of that, when you give the contractor, when you walk them through, most people don't create a scope of work, and they get the contractor started, and then there's a dispute on the actual stuff that needs to get done. So let's talk about that. First of all, the realtor scope. Why I put a realtor scope? What I'm asking here is I want the realtor to tell me, hey, we just did some comps and you said this house was worth $100,000. Okay, so what, in your opinion, walk through the house with the realtor and get their opinion on what they think that they need to do to that house in order to sell it fast. A lot of times they're going to say, hey, I want tile floors in the bathroom, tile floors in the kitchens. I want a tile backsplash. I want you to put nice countertops or stainless appliances in. Listen to what they say. That doesn't mean you have to take their word for word and do exactly what they're saying, because what if that realtor is over improving? You do need to listen to their ideas though, and then do your research with the other houses that are for sale in the area and make sure that it matches. So I like to hold the realtor accountable, but in order to do that, I have to get from them what I need to do to this house in their opinion to sell it for the price they think. I can't go back to them and say, hey, you were wrong if this house doesn't sell, if I didn't listen and said, I put linoleum down in the floors in the kitchen when all the other houses in the neighborhood had tile. So I like to get their ideas on what needs to be done, and then I build that into the actual printed scope of work. Now, I've got a copy of that below. I want you guys to use my scope of work. We also have a video. We'll cut to that in a little bit here, but what I want you to do is actually use my scope of work, because it's simple, it's only one page, but it doesn't miss a lot of the basic stuff. I always, some of the things we always do, we always change the outlets and switches. We make sure everything gets painted. We go to the exterior. People always forget about the exterior and that landscaping and making sure the gutters look good and there's no chipping paint on the, on the exterior at all. Around the windows, people will walk past that and forget, and then it won't sell FHA. But, getting the downspouts and making sure everything is nice, clean, and crisp, that scope of work doesn't miss a beat. That's years of me doing deal after deal after deal where I, go in and do rental properties or fix and flip, and we don't want the contractor to miss anything. Because here's what happens. You go out and get a contractor started, and you walk through the house and you don't write anything down, and the contractor's writing a few things down, and he tells you, hey, I can rehab this house for $15,000. You get all done, and this contractor didn't do one or two items, and you go back to him and say, hey, we talked about, you were going to do this. He goes, no, that wasn't in my bid. And then all of a sudden, now you're paying more money to go back and do those things. You have to have it written. So in my scope of work, I have the basics at the top, and the box at the top with everything that I'm expecting done. At the bottom, we add in all the extras. And those are where some of that stuff comes in with the realtor, what they think you should do, and along with just the added things that might need to be done with a house. Like, for example, maybe the roof's bad, you've got to add in that, or a foundation repair or something along those lines. You add that in the bottom. That video will help explain that to you. So the other thing too is why I like the printed scope of work. If you get 3 bids, and I tell everybody, make sure you get 3 bids on every job from 3 different subcontractors or contractors. And if, let's say that one guy bids a house at 10, one guy bids a house at 12, and one guy bids a house at 15. Which contractor is going to get awarded the job? Well, the guy that bids it for $10,000. He's the cheapest price. But what if that guy, you didn't have a printed scope of work, and you walked all 3 of these guys through, and the guy that bid it for 10 wasn't including new cabinets and new countertops, and the guy that was bidding it for 15 had new cabinets, new countertops, tile floors, tile bathroom surround, and his scope of work was actually different and more than the guy that was doing 10,000. His scope of work was less, and the guy that had the highest price actually had the best price because he was doing a lot more items. That's why you need a scope of work. So when you give this project to 3 different people to bid the house, they're all bidding the exact same thing. So you can award it to the best price and know that everybody bid the exact same thing. That's what's really important. The other thing is they have to be, this has to be bid 2 things. The contractor has to bid the price, but they also have to bid the timeline, and we're going to jump into that in a second. So get the realtor's opinion on what they think that needs to be. The other thing about the realtor is I use 2 realtors. So we use a 2 realtor system. And what I mean by that is you're out there making offers. If you're making offers through a realtor, that realtor gets paid when that deal closes, okay? So what's the chances that realtor might, exaggerate the ARV a little bit to make it look like a better deal? I'm not saying that they're lying. I'm just saying they're using all the higher end comps. What's the chance of that happen? Well, what I like to do is I'll use one realtor to make offers, and I'll use another realtor to list my fix and flips. And why I do that is because when realtor number 1 says, oh man, you got a killer deal, you just got this under contract, I bring in realtor number 2 and say, okay, I just have this house under contract contract with this other realtor. I'm going to use you to list it. What do you think I can sell this for? And so now you've got the person, two different people. This realtor gets paid when they buy. This realtor gets paid when it sells. This realtor, when it sells, he or she's going to give you the exact best price that they think, because they're only getting paid if that thing sells and closes. So we like to do that. That way it keeps everybody in check. It's a checks and balances deal. So make sure you're doing the same thing. Get two realtors, one to buy and one to sell. Make sure you're using this printed scope of work, and make sure you're getting 3 bids. Now, we, in general, I'll just let you guys know, we use a $15, $20, and $25 per square foot. What that means is if it's a light rehab, we know it's going to cost around $15. If it's a medium, it's going to be $20, and if it's a higher end, it's going to be $25. That's just a ballpark number, but what's really going to dial this in? So you're using this when you end up, you're going to do a fix and flip. You're using these numbers from the start as your ballpark rehab numbers, but you're going to get 3 bids from 3 different contractors with the printed scope of work, and they're going to bid out each item. So, if there's, if that roof is bad, then you need to get 3 roofing bids on that roof. That way you're getting a good price. If you just get one, how do you know that the person's gonna, not gonna bid it out of sight? The biggest secret in contracting is if a contractor's really, really busy, he's gonna overbid. He's gonna throw in a really high bid because he doesn't need the work. He's gonna say, hey, my normal cost on this would be $5,000. I'm gonna throw out 10,000, and if I get it, then then I'll make a killing. But if I don't get it, no big deal. I don't care. I got enough work anyway. That's the biggest secret in contracting. On the other hand, if you get somebody that doesn't have a lot of work at the moment and they bid that same job, you might get a really good deal. That's why I like to go with 3 bids. So you're going to get 3 bids, and if it needs, a roof, you'll bid that with three different bids. On the interior rehab, that contractors, you're going to get 3 different bids from those contractors. If it needs a foundation repair, you're going to get a couple, 3 bids on that one. So just remember that you want to make sure you have the whole scope of work. And if one contractor only does interior remodel and you got a roof to do as well, you've got to get those contractors in there as well. You've got to get this stuff done up front so you know what you're going to be walking into for a price. So keep that in mind. So what I want you to do now with knowing this information is I want you to go to the scope of work, go to the bottom. We've got the actual document that you can print off and use for yourself for your scope of work. But I want you to watch this video so you can see how we're putting these scopes of work together. So watch the video and then we'll be back. Okay guys, watch this video and then it's time for an action step, and I'll be back as soon as the video is done.
This is a video on how to complete a scope of work. So you can either use our template here or you can create your own. And what we do is we put our company name or the name of the company that is doing the rehab bid up here at the very top. And then in these 2 boxes, you'll see all of the bulleted items. These are the items that we always include for every rehab that we do. So those rarely ever change. But if there's something in here that you don't plan to do or you want to add to it, you can just go ahead and edit that as you wish. And then if you scroll down, scope of work, and right here is where we put the property address that we're quoting. And then below that, you'll see additional items completed. So this is the section that always changes depending on the house that we're quoting. As you can see here, we have windows and screens will be repaired, doors replaced, toilet, vanity, medicine cabinet, and faucets will be replaced. If we were going to replace the roof, if we were going to replace the furnace or the water heater, anything that's not normally included in every scope, we add down here to this section. And then at the very bottom is where we put the amount that the rehab is going to cost. So it's pretty simple. Just update that and edit it as needed, depending on what you plan to do to the house. Or you can take this and give it to the company that you want to go out and bid your house so that they can include this information in their bid as well. So that is how to fill out the scope of work and use that to get a rehab bid.
Okay, so we're back. So let's talk timeline. So holding costs will kill you in a fix and flip if you're not careful. So you need to make sure you're aware of everything that's going on. So I wanted to cover the actual timeline with you so that you can follow along and hit the same timelines. So let's talk about the rehab. Your rehab should be 60 days or less from the time you close. Okay, so I hit 30 days on a regular basis. And you really should be shooting for that. A lot of times you can even get it done less than that, but you should be shooting for as low as you can. Now, remember what I said, when you have a contractor quote a job, you need to have them quote two things. One, they're quoting the price. Two, they're quoting the timeline. And you need to have a penalty in place per day for every day they go over timeline. So for example, if you have your interior remodel contractor and they say they can get done in 2 weeks, and you count actual calendar days, then if they go over that, they should be getting hit with a $50 to $100 a day penalty, whatever you agree to. That way they'll keep your job at the top priority and make sure it gets done. If you don't put that penalty in, it's very likely that if they find another job, remember when I was saying that, hey, if they don't have, or if they have a ton of work, and they don't need the work, that they'll throw out a 10, where they normally would bid something at 5,000, they'll throw out 10, and if they get it, great. Well, what happens is if they're on your job and they get one of those scenarios where they throw out a big high estimate and they win it, guess what? The reason they can fit that in and they'll pay more, or they'll get paid more, is they'll push yours off to the side, go do the $10,000 job, and then come back and do yours when they get a chance. If you don't have a penalty in there with timelines specified, then it will stretch out and you will end up taking a lot longer than it should. So I like to tell everybody, if you're a beginner, you need to have that rehab done in 60 days or less. I have a friend of mine that does a lot of fix and flips, and it's so funny because he thinks that he's a genius during an uptrending market. He'll buy a house and do a fix and flip, and he's so inefficient, he's so scatterbrained that it'll take him 9 months to a year to finish a rehab. And then he sells it, and it sells for a big profit, and he always calls me up, man, I am a genius at this real estate stuff. I bought this house and I just made a $50,000 profit. And the problem is he's investing in a uptrending market that's moving up 20% a year. So what happens is his own inefficiencies and the fact that he takes a really long time, the house value goes up really high, and then he sells it. Had the market stayed even, he wouldn't have made a profit, but because he's so slow, he actually made a profit. That's not a good thing. You should be working on getting this in and out of this house as fast as you can, especially if you have private money. So try to stick to 60 days or less. The other thing too is you've got to figure on the type of buyer that ends up coming in and buying. Now, if you get a cash buyer, and this happens on occasion, that somebody that's going to buy a retail house, they'll pay cash for it every month. That if you track it, there's always cash buyers paying for retail properties that they want to move in. So if they pay cash, you can close in a couple of weeks or less. I mean, that changes how fast you close and changes your holding costs. A conventional buyer, they need about 30 days. So they're using conventional financing. They're putting 20% down. They don't have all the hoops to jump through that an FHA or VA buyer does. So those people can close in about 30 days. So you'll want to remember that when you get that offer. If it's a conventional offer, they'll close in about 30 days. If it's cash, a couple of weeks. If it's an FH or VA, you got to figure on 45 to 60 days. These loans have a high scrutiny rate. These people move really slow. The underwriters, sometimes they need 2 appraisals. There's lots of underwriting. They watch, because these buyers are putting nothing down, they go through their finances extremely carefully, and it takes a lot of time. So keep in mind, when you get an offer, and if it's going to be one of these 3, you can base your response or your counter on the fact of what kind of financing they're using. So the other thing to really think about is seasonality. If you're in the Midwest and you buy a house in, let's say in October, and the winter hits pretty hard and the sales really drop off to next to nothing, By the time you get it done in 60 days, you're in December and Christmas time is happening and nobody's going to buy. You know, at that point, you're not going to get as high a price as what you would as if you timed it where you bought the house in December or January, you were done rehabbing it in March or April, and you're hitting the market at the perfect time. So you got to watch that. If you're in a hotter climate like in Florida or, you know, Southern California or maybe like Arizona, you know, if you time that where you're putting it up for sale during the summertime, it's the same scenario. Maybe not as exaggerated as what it is in the Midwest during the winter, but fewer people want to move in the summertime. So keep that in mind when you're buying the property. The date in which you close will really change the way that your timeline lasts. So let's really look at it here. If you close on day 1 and you have the rehab done in 60 days, you know, there's 60 days added right there of holding costs. And then, if it takes 30 days, so you put it up for sale on day 60, the rehab's done. Put it up for sale, your realtor does an amazing job, and they get it under contract in 30 days. That's what your realtor's shooting for, is 30 days or less. So now you're 90 days. Well then, let's say that an FHA buyer decides to buy the property, they make an offer and you accept. You got to add another 60 days on there. So what you're really looking at is 150 days. So I always tell new investors, plan on 6 months. 150 days is 5 months. Plan on 6 months or less for your timeline. It's not going to happen in 30 days. You're not going to buy a house, fix it up, put it back up for sale, and have it close in 30 days. Yes, I've done that many times, but you're not going to do that first out of the gate. Plan on holding that house for 6 months. Now, for holding costs, you want to figure about 1% per month of whatever, 1 to 2% per month for whatever you have into that house. So if you got $100,000 a month into that property, you're going to pay holding costs of, $1,000 to $2,000 a month, and it all depends on if you've used private money or if you just use your own cash, hard money. That can really vary. I mean, these money at 18% can really eat up, and that cost will go even up from there. Figure out what you're paying for your money every single month to hold that property. And I build all this into my rehab costs. So you got to figure out what the money's costing you per month. You got to figure out you're paying taxes, you're paying insurance, you're paying maintenance, you're paying, utilities. All that stuff adds up, and you've got to figure that into your rehab costs so that you know what your true profit will be. True, you're not paying, your taxes every single month, but when you go to sell that, the title company is going to charge you back for the months that you owned that property. So it's still going to be figured in at the end. So, that's really the rundown on the timeline. We just learned a ton about fix and flips. If you use the information that I just taught you, you can go out of the gate and buy a fix and flip and really make a nice profit without very little risk. So I hope the fix and flip segment was really good. Congratulations on getting through it. Take action, and we'll catch you on the next one.